Well, hello, as we're getting closer to spring, guess what time it is? It is seed starting time. And if you followed me, you know I love seed starting because I love gardening and I'm very passionate about it because guess what? We have a chance every year to start seeds, plant a seed, watch it grow, harvest the food, the fruit, whatever it is, bring it into the kitchen and use it. And there is nothing more exciting than watching that life cycle and living through it. So what I'm doing today is starting my hot peppers, and that's because it is still cold outside. I can't plant them outside. They want hot weather, but guess what? You have to start them ahead of time to get them to the point where they can be transplanted outside. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, I do a variety of hot peppers, about 2 per pepper, just to make sure I have good viability and plenty of plants when I go to plant them. So the tools we need for seed starting, what do we need? We need seed trays. Now you can use seed trays like this with removable bottoms. You can use the smaller ones that are 6-pack or 4-pack. You can use whatever works for you. I like these seed trays. I use them every year. I do sterilize them in between just in case there's any fungal diseases living in them. You don't want that. So I wash them out, reuse them, but that's the best part. Reuse them. Don't throw them away. And then the important thing is seed starting soil. Now, seed starting soil is super important because guess what? Seed starting soil is not actual soil. It is literally formulated for seed starting, meaning it is very lightweight, very airy. It is peat. I love espoma because it has even some yucca in it, which means it's going to really have a good chance of holding on to some moisture, which is important. And I love an organic product. I only think about it. What we put into our food and how we grow it is only as good as what we get out of it. So you want to start with the right thing. So seed starting soil allows the roots to really easily work through once they break through that little seed. It allows the actual seedling to break through the top and come out. So that's why you really want to make sure you have a good seed starting mix and not just any old soil, not top soil. You want seed starting mix. So what I do is I like to put mine in a tub because I like to slightly pre-moisten it because it is so light and airy that if you put this directly into your trays without any water, just dry, when you go and plant your seed and then water it, it displaces so much of the soil because it's so light and airy. So first what I do, this is kind of, we're in my baking room and this is perfect because it's kind of like when you make a pie dough. I'm actually just going through and I'm working that water into this just like I would if I was making a pastry. And that's just gonna help me make sure that it's slightly getting some just a little bit of moisture to begin with. So I'm gonna work this slowly through until it wants to hold together just a little bit and then we'll start putting it into trays. Now, as you can see, this is not sopping wet. You can't wring any moisture out of it. It just has a slight dampness to it, which to me helps fill these more evenly and it helps it be more correct. So I put it into a tub because look, I don't want to get that mess everywhere. This is still my kitchen. I try to keep it clean. So I instead make sure I put it in the trays and then slightly press. You don't want to pack it in because you want those roots to easily be able to go through it, but you also want it to make sure it's full. Which seed starting soil is so lightweight that you sometimes have to check it perfectly and make sure. So it's just easy to do that when you have a tray like this, and you can then just see how quickly that just went down, which is with a slight finger tap. So that's why I make sure to not pack it in, but just level it off, and then they're nice and full. Look at that, it's perfect, ready to go. See how quick seed starting can be? I think we get scared of doing it, but then once you do it a time or two and see how easy it can be to get seeds going, you're gonna wanna do it, it's addicting. So when you go to start planting, this is the fun part because this just takes no time at all. Now I like to make a little bit of a divot in each, oh, but here's my spatula. I have a little spatula that helps me do this, but make a little divot. Now you could do this with the back of a pencil, you could do this with anything, but what this does is it allows a little spot where your seed is gonna go. Now look on the back of your seed packets, but they usually tell you most seeds are about 1/4 of an inch into the soil. So it's a very slight little indentation, little impression, and then you're able just to drop your seed into it. So like I said, I do about 2 plants per pepper. That's just what I wanna do. Now you can do a couple. I always think you should do more than one of something, even if you just want one plant, because guess what? If it doesn't happen to germinate, you then do have another. It's just always good to have a backup. Or if your seedlings are growing for a little over a month, mine are gonna have to grow for close to 2 months before I plant these outside. Then you have a couple just to make sure you have seedlings to plant. Now pepper seeds are really easy to see and that's the fun part. Recently I planted all my lettuce seed and those are teeny tiny like grass. They're like grass seed and so they're hard to plant. So these, you put the seed right in the center. Now, if you're gonna be like me, seeds are pretty reasonable. They're pretty cheap because they last a few years. I put a couple seeds in each hole because I wanna make sure these pop up. So that way if one seed maybe happens not to, you don't have to worry about it. So you can see I'm just doing 2 of that. That's the California Wonder bell pepper, which I love because it's one that turns red. Remember with peppers, I think this is something people don't remember. When these are growing out in the garden, they're all gonna start off green. So don't freak out when your red pepper starts off green. It has to ripen to turn red. So I'm gonna keep putting all my seeds in. Then we'll talk about how we cover them up and how we water them. That's important. So once I have all the seeds in there, what we do is we go over and we just lightly, just make sure the soil covers them. Don't press them down. We did all this work to make sure we have a good seed starting soil, that it is not too packed in there, so there is no reason now just to sit there and press them down. You wanna keep them nice and light and just cover them. Now, the next line of defense, vermiculite. I'm sure you've been hearing the buzz. There's a buzz about it if you didn't know. What vermiculite is a natural substance. It's like kind of like a perlite, if you've heard of that. And what this does is it creates a barrier. So a lot of times what can happen, not a lot of times, but if you have seedlings that die, sometimes they come up, they look decent, and then all at once they kind of rot off and they just wither and die. That could be called damping off. And when they do that, what happens is there's fungal-borne diseases that can live in the soil or just around here, and they can actually just kill off the seedling. So this creates a barrier between the soil and the seed. It helps keep in some of the moisture into the soil, but it also helps the actual seedling that pokes through and is above ground not be too wet and sit with the moisture as much. So it creates a barrier for both, and it just does a lot of good. So we cover them up with the vermiculite, which it can easily poke through the vermiculite, and then it just helps. It really is a great thing to do. So if you haven't used vermiculite and have maybe sometimes not had the best of luck, that could be why. So when we go to water them, now if we did all this work and we just sit here and water the top of all of them, that soil and vermiculite is just gonna go everywhere. Seeds are gonna pop out, you don't want that. So you always wanna water from underneath. That's what seed trays are designed for. You can put the water in this basin, it holds it, and when you get up to a certain point, you can put them back down in, and that will now just soak up into them. That's perfect. So once you have them ready to go, we then create a little greenhouse. We take a cover, that's why you buy a seed starting tray with a cover, and you put it right on. And now what's gonna happen is, we're gonna put them under a grow light, and that light is gonna create a little bit of warmth. And what happens in that warmth is, condensation happens, and it has a nice moist environment for that seed to initially poke through. Because what does a seed need? It needs moisture, it needs air, and it needs warmth. So that's what's gonna happen in this. So I will put these under my grow lights, and I will put the grow light as far to this as I can without touching the plastic. You don't want any melting, you don't want anything like that. So it'll be as close as I can. Then once they sprout, we're gonna remove the plastic. We'll have little green sprouts all throughout here, and we'll move the lights down as close as we can, again, without touching the sprouts, because if you touch the sprouts, they could burn. But you want the light as close as you can, because that's gonna create a really strong plant. Now you'll notice, of course, I always have to mark what I have, and there's one here I didn't mark. I just take my label maker, and I make little labels, because to me it's the cleanest way, and I have awful handwriting that I'll never know what it says. So I just stick them on. I can leave them on year to year if I want to, or put new ones on. That one's the lilac bell, which is a beautiful purple bell. Why do we start seeds? Yeah, to grow things, but what's great is when you start seeds, look at all these varieties of peppers I'm getting. All these numerous varieties of different types of peppers. Now, oftentimes when you go to a garden center, you can't find all these varieties because one place could not get in all these, and oftentimes growers don't grow all these varieties. So we do them at home so we can grow these different heirloom seeds that have different flavors and nuances, so you can make different sauces, can different items if you're like me, and all those things. Also, we start them because sometimes we use special ones, like these are my grandma's peppers, I call them. So my mom's mom has these wonderful peppers that are little tiny miniature bell peppers kind of. And what we do is we take them raw and we stuff them with cabbage. Bear with me for a minute. Then we put them into jars and we pickle them and can them, and you have this delicious pickled pepper stuffed with cabbage. It sounds absolutely just bizarre. It is, but it's delicious. But that's what we do. We save seeds every year. So growing things allows us to have an extended life with it too, and that's what's exciting. So you guys, I don't know if you remember, but the other day I did a story where I asked for questions. So we are gonna do, I think, what are the top questions that hit Q&A here for seed starting on what everything we need to know and how to give you the best knowledge you need. First question, how do I get little seedling sprouts from getting leggy and floppy? I brought in just like a temporary grow light that I used to use. Now, this is the best way, is to have ample, good light for your starts. So you wanna put your trays underneath the light and get it as close as you can. So when we're starting seeds, we're going to put the light down as far as we can without touching these containers because it can get warm. Once they sprout, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna pull these off and there's gonna be little green starts once they sprout. And we're gonna put this down really close to those sprouts because guess what? If it's not close, these sprouts are gonna be trying to get to the light. So every time they grow, you always wanna move them up so they're not touching the light because they could get burned. But the closer the light is, the stronger it will be for them and they won't get leggy trying to grow towards light. That's why sometimes when you start them on a windowsill, they get leggy and long. They don't have the right light. When using a soil blocker, does the cube fall apart when watering? Great question. To start, you need to make sure your soil is the right mixture of water. So it needs to be wet, more wet than if you put it in trays, and you need to pack it in correctly. Now you could do it by hand like I'm doing, or press it down. Once it's packed in well, you really want to make sure that you even go in with your fingers and fill in all those extra spaces, because if it is packed well and comes out well into your new tray, you will be able to keep this together, and every time it's watered, it will just stay together. That's the beauty of it. You can tell now this is packed well. So now what I can do is put it right into my tray, squeeze down, make sure it's good, pull up, look at those beautiful cubes. Now every time I water all around the edges, it will soak in and stay a nice cube. It will never fall apart. Is it best to start seeds or buy starts from a nursery? Great question. Honestly, the answer is, what are you comfortable with? If you've never gardened before and you just want to be able to plant something, buy starts at a nursery and don't worry about the seed starting the first year. If you're really getting into gardening and care about what types of seeds you grow, the heirloom varieties, if the seeds are organic, everything like that, start your own, because then you can choose exactly the varieties you want. You can pick when you start them so you can plant them outside at the time you want to. That's the important part. So choose what works best for you. If you're new, go buy your seedlings this year and just plant them outside. If you've been doing it a while and want certain ones, start your own. It'll be fun. Do you use a warming pad? This is a great question. So in the past, I have used one when I started seeds in my basement because it was kind of cooler down there. A warming pad is just that, a small pad that rises the temperature about 10 to 20 degrees underneath and around the soil. So you put your seeds tray on it, it warms it slightly, helps seeds germinate quicker, also helps ward off dampening off, which is when it is a cool, moist environment for the seed, it can sometimes dampen off and rot with fungus or disease. So if you are starting these in a really cool environment, a warming pad's a great idea, or if you want to quicken the process. But if you're starting them in a warmer area anyway, like I do, that's heated, I don't worry about having a warming pad and it works out just fine. So it depends what area you work in, but it can be good, it can quicken the process, or you may not need one. What supplies do you need if starting seeds for the first time? I love this. Hello, beginner gardeners. I'm your friend. So you need a seed starting tray. This is one that you can put soil into. It can be different sizes, but you just need something to put soil into. You need a dome for it. This is going to create a greenhouse effect. Afterwards, you need seed starting soil. It is different than potting soil. It doesn't have actual soil in it. Instead, it has just what seeds need, which is peat moss, vermiculite, or perlite. Light, airy mixture that helps seed roots get through and sprout through the ground. You need seeds. Buy whatever seeds excite you, what you're gonna wanna plant and grow, and some vermiculite. This is to put on top of the soil, just like these have, that little brown stuff, and it helps trap in moisture, but also helps create a good barrier between the soil and the seedling. You'll be on the road to success. What order do you start things and how do you plan for your space? This could go a few different directions. I think one, it's important to realize what order can you plant things in outside, because you have to work backwards from that to know when you start them inside. So cooler season items like lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, they can be started earlier inside. So work backwards from what date you can plant those outside according to your planting zone, which you can Google, and then you know about at least 6 weeks before that, you need to plant them indoors to get them ready. Same with your warm season things, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant. Those need to be started 6 weeks before your last frost date. For me in zone 5, that's May 15, backwards 6 weeks. At the beginning of April, I'm gonna plant my tomatoes and peppers. So if you work backwards, you can plan out what you need, when you need it, and if it can be pretty much ready. Look at your planting dates, look at your frost dates, and you'll be able to know by the back of the seed packet. When is it okay to leave the dome or covering off of seedlings, and do they still need overhead light? Great question. So you leave the dome on to create a greenhouse effect and condensation on the dome until you see little green leaves starting to poke through all these little ground. At that point, you take the dome off. And yes, they still need overhead light, and as much of it as they can and as close to the seedlings as they can. So you put the light as close as you can to the green without touching it because it could burn it. At this point, this will help them not get leggy and help them grow strong, sturdy, stocky plants, and that's what you want. So every time the plant grows, you need to slightly raise your light to make sure it's not going to touch the seedling, and continually be doing this until you can plant them outdoors because they need to be strong and sturdy with the light. Do you have any trouble getting peppers to germinate, or any tips on how to get them to germinate? So peppers are one of the items that can take longer to germinate. They should only take 7 to 10 days, but if they're in a cool environment, they like to be warmer to germinate. So if they're not germinating, your environment could be too cool. Your germination rate on your packet, if it's old, could not be as good. So make sure you have new seed, a warm environment, and give them time. You could always, to check how viable your seeds are, put a few seeds between some wet or damp paper towels, put them under light, and see if they can sprout and just start wanting to bring out some green. If they don't, your germination could be pretty bad on them. But give them time, give them a little bit of warmth, and hopefully they'll germinate. Talk about damping off. Now this could be a funny question if you have no idea what damping off is. It pertains to seed starting. Damping off, it can also happen in the garden, but what happens is after a little seedling sprouts and its little cotyledons, which are its 2 first leaves, come out, all of a sudden it will start not looking good, maybe get gray, maybe get kind of rotted, and then just die. And that's damping off. And it could be caused from a fungal disease in the soil, too wet of environment, too cool and wet of environment. So there's a few things you can do to make sure this doesn't happen. 1, start seeds in a warmer environment. If your area is cool, put a heating pad under them. 2, put vermiculite on top of the soil like I did. Vermiculite is a natural occurring substance, and what this helps do is create a barrier between all the moist soil and the new seedling that will sprout up. This can really help prevent damping off and have a lot better luck. So if you do all those things, hopefully you won't have a problem with damping off. Planting directly outside. When is that okay? And do I do anything to just get the area ready? Totally get that question. So some seeds can be directly sown outside, and that's most of them. Your lettuce, your radishes, your spinach, your greens, all those things can be planted directly outside. I like to think of a soil temperature between 45 and 50 degrees is ideal, so it can get some warmth to help germinate that seed. To get the area ready in my raised beds, all I do is put some fresh compost on every year to give it a little bit of nutrients, but also just kind of a top dressing, which is nice. It will slowly amend the soil and help feed the plants because it's organic compost, which is what they need. Otherwise, I do nothing other than dig a small little trench, the depth of the seed needing, usually about 1/4 inch, sprinkle the seed in, cover it up, water, and watch it grow. Totally can do it. You can do most of your seeds outside other than bigger things, and you'll have great luck. We have them going. We're gonna put them under grow lights now. Hopefully all those questions can help you just troubleshoot and think of things that will go better for you, because guess what? We all are always learning. Do I always have a 100% success rate? Absolutely not. I'm not trained in this. I'm still learning with you, and that's the best part. When we can learn from each other, learn from all of our gardening woes and goes, the good things too, and we can all just be better off with that, and that's the best part. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you feel excited to start seeds. I hope you see that it's a few simple things you need, ingredients have you, and then you'll be ready to start your own garden if you so choose, and that's the best part. So share this video around, not just because it helps me, but because everyone then can see gardening is doable, seed starting is possible, you can do it. If we all grow a garden, we're growing a greener world, we're growing better food, and we're gonna get excited about it. So share it around, check my website, wiseguy.com, for seed starting tips, for recipes on how to use those seeds you started, and everything else in between. Till next time, grow some seeds.